A bullied princess, mocked for her body and rejected by everyone, discovers inner strength and transforms herself, shocking the entire kingdom. The hallways of the Royal Secondary School were never kind to Princess Matilda. Every step she took seemed to echo louder than the last, as if announcing to the world that she was different. Students whispered behind their hands, snickering and pointing, their voices slicing through her like tiny daggers. Why do they hate me so much? She thought, gripping the straps of her school bag so tightly that her knuckles turned white. As she walked past the classrooms, a group of girls snickered and whispered names that made her stomach twist. Fat Matilda, one hissed. Look at her, another added. She's bigger than 3 of us combined. Even some of the palace maids, who were supposed to be gentle and caring, joined in quietly, their murmurs following her through the corridors. The laughter, though muffled, seemed to grow inside her, filling her chest with a heavy ache. Matilda tried to smile, tried to pretend she didn't hear the cruel words, but each laugh carved deeper lines of doubt into her heart. In the dining hall, she carefully took her seat at the far end, hoping to go unnoticed. Chairs scraped across the polished floor as other girls pushed away, holding their noses and whispering about her presence as if it were a terrible smell. Even the air seems against me, she thought bitterly, lowering her gaze to the plate of untouched food before her. During sports lessons, the humiliation continued. Every time teams were chosen, her name was called last or sometimes not at all. She watched the others run, jump, and play, their laughter echoing in her ears while she was left standing alone, a quiet spectator in her own life. The coach, a thin, stern woman, always offered a kind alternative. Princess Matilda, you can be the scorekeeper today. We wouldn't want you to tire yourself, she said, clicking her tongue in exaggerated sympathy. And yet, it wasn't just the students. Even the cats of the palace seemed to notice her difference, slinking away from her presence as though sensing the vulnerability that wrapped around her like a cloak. Matilda longed to disappear, to vanish into the gardens or behind the thick curtains of her room. If only they could see me, the real me, not just this body they mock. She carried the weight of each cruel word home, her reflection in the palace mirrors reflecting not just her image but the shadows of every whispered insult, every sneer, every turned-away face. Every day, she fought to hold herself upright, to keep walking, to keep breathing, even when the world seemed intent on reminding her of what she lacked. And yet, even in the depths of this pain, a tiny flicker of resilience remained. It was fragile and trembling, but it whispered, "You are more than their laughter. You are more than their cruelty." Matilda's feet pounded the marble floors of the palace, echoing like frantic drumbeats in the silent corridors. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her sobs shaking her small frame as she clutched the folds of her dress. Why does it hurt so much? Why does no one see me for who I am? She thought, her heart heavy with loneliness. She burst into her father's chamber without knocking, barely noticing the courtiers and advisors who quickly stepped aside. King Hugo, seated on his grand throne, looked up from the papers of village disputes scattered before him. The moment he saw her tear-streaked face, all other matters melted away. "Matilda, my precious jewel," he whispered, opening his arms wide. Without hesitation, she collapsed into his embrace, burying her face against his chest. Her sobs were loud and raw, shaking his own heart. "Papa, why am I like this? Why am I so fat, so ugly? Why does everyone hate me? Even the palace maids laugh behind my back. I heard them yesterday, calling me Madam Roundabout. Papa, I want to disappear. I want to die." King Hugo's eyes softened, a mixture of sadness and fierce protectiveness glinting in their depths. He stroked her hair gently, whispering reassurances over her trembling shoulders. "Listen to me, my daughter. You are not ugly. You are beautiful exactly as you are. Those who mock you, they have ugly hearts. Beauty is not only what the eye can see. Your heart is pure gold, and that is what truly matters." Matilda pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his face, desperate for a spark of hope she had almost forgotten. But even as his words wrapped around her like a comforting blanket, The weight of daily torment still pressed heavily on her chest. Will it ever stop? Will anyone ever see me differently? She wondered silently, her spirit still trembling beneath the surface. The king held her tighter, his voice firm yet tender. Do not let the cruelty of others define you, Matilda. The world may not yet understand your light, but it will. One day, they will see the strength and beauty that I have always seen in you. She closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment to breathe in his love, feeling both fragile and safe at once. Yet, deep down, the ache of rejection lingered, a reminder that words alone could not erase the scars etched into her young heart. For now, in her father's chamber, Matilda learned a small truth, that love and compassion could be a shield, even if the world outside remained cruel. It was the first flicker of strength in a life that had known so much pain. The palace corridors, once filled with laughter and music, now carried a quiet tension. Princess Matilda had reached the age where suitors should have been lining up, eager to win her hand, yet the palace gates remained empty. Each day, King Hugo waited with hope in his heart, only to be met with silence. Does no one truly see her worth? He wondered, frustration building like storm clouds on the horizon. When the first suitor finally arrived, Matilda's heart fluttered with a mix of hope and dread. The young man, dressed in fine clothes and carrying a rehearsed smile, bowed before the king. But as soon as he laid eyes on Matilda, something shifted. His smile faltered, his gaze flickered toward the lavish palace, the gold, and the treasures surrounding her. He muttered compliments that felt hollow, praising her wealth more than her character. King Hugo watched silently, his eyes narrowing. I asked you to see her, not my treasures, he said quietly, a controlled anger in his voice. The suitor stammered, flustered, and was promptly dismissed. Day after day, suitor after suitor appeared. Each one seemed more concerned with the palace's riches than with the princess herself. One complimented her teeth but never her mind. Another gawked at the royal mansion, ignoring her presence entirely. And yet another, trying to impress with words of romance, accidentally mentioned the duplex and the luxury carriage, as if those were the only things worth pursuing. Matilda sat quietly through it all, feeling invisible in a crowd that should have adored her. Do they only care about what they can take, not who I am? She thought, a pang of sadness tightening her chest. Her eyes darted to her father, seeing the disappointment mirrored in his face, yet also the unyielding love that refused to waver. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, but still no genuine suitor appeared. Matilda learned a bitter truth. The world often judges by what is seen on the outside, not by the heart within. Men came seeking fortune, fame, or social status, not the kindness, intelligence, and warmth that she had to offer. Every failed proposal was a reminder that love without understanding was meaningless. And yet, in the quiet moments, Matilda found herself thinking of something deeper. She began to understand that she did not need validation from those who only saw her body. Her worth was not measured by their acceptance or rejection, but by her own heart and character. King Hugo, though heartbroken for his daughter, silently vowed that one day she would meet someone who valued her for who she truly was, someone who could see beyond the surface and recognize the treasure that lay within. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the palace gardens, but Princess Matilda barely noticed. She walked slowly, her gaze fixed on the cobblestones, each step heavy with the weight of endless ridicule. Whispers from the staff and the distant laughter of the court still echoed in her mind. Like a cruel chorus she could never escape. Will anyone ever see me as more than this body? She thought, her heart sinking. It was then that Jack, the palace gatesman, approached quietly, his footsteps almost silent on the gravel path. He was a simple man by all appearances, modest clothes, hands rough from work, and eyes that had seen the kingdom's comings and goings for many years. But there was something in his gaze that made Matilda pause. He didn't look at her and see the sighs they all mocked. He looked at her and saw the ache in her heart. Princess Matilda, Jack said, bowing slightly, his voice calm and steady. May I speak with you? Her head lifted slightly, surprise flickering across her face. Nobody had ever approached her like this before. Not a tutor, not a guest, not even a friend. The sincerity in his tone was different. It wasn't pity, nor mockery. It was understanding. "I've watched you for a long time," he continued. "I see your pain. I know what it feels like to be judged for what others notice on the outside. I cannot undo the cruelty, but I can help you find your strength, inside and out." Matilda felt a strange mixture of hope and skepticism. Could someone really see her worth without expecting anything in return? Is this another trick? Or is he truly different? She wondered, her heart cautious yet curious. Jack smiled gently, as if reading her thoughts. "I was once a fitness trainer before this job," he said. "I can teach you how to move your body in ways that make you strong and confident. I can guide you in eating for energy, not punishment. But more than that, I can help you build the belief in yourself that no one else can take away. Not for a man, not for your father, not for the kingdom, for you." Something in Matilda's chest stirred. A tiny flame of hope she thought had long since died. The idea that she could feel strong, capable, and proud of herself, just for her own happiness, seemed almost too good to believe. And yet, she could not deny the truth in his words, nor the kindness in his eyes. "When can we start?" she whispered, a mixture of fear and anticipation threading through her voice. Jack's smile widened. "Tomorrow morning, before the sun rises. Wear something comfortable, and bring only yourself and your determination." For the first time in years, Matilda felt a sense of purpose, a small but unshakable belief that change was possible. She realized that this journey would not be easy, and the world outside might not yet be ready to accept her. But the first step had been taken. The first rays of dawn touched the palace gardens as Matilda laced up her shoes, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The world was still quiet, the kingdom barely awake, but her mind was alive with the weight of what she was about to do. She met Jack under the arch of flowering vines, his calm presence a steady anchor amidst the storm of doubt swirling inside her. "Today we start, princess," Jack said gently, motioning toward the garden path. "Simple steps, nothing overwhelming. Remember, it's not about losing weight first. It's about gaining strength, confidence, and belief in yourself." Matilda nodded, though every fiber of her body screamed that this was going to be impossible. The first steps felt clumsy, her muscles uncooperative after years of little movement. She stumbled. Her breathing came in ragged bursts, and the tears she had tried so hard to hide threatened to spill. "Can I really do this? Will it even make a difference?" she thought, her heart trembling between doubt and desire. Jack noticed, but he did not scold or rush her. "It's okay to struggle," he said softly. "Every step, no matter how small, is progress. You are stronger than you think." He demonstrated stretches and gentle movements, guiding her patiently, celebrating every small accomplishment. A longer walk, steadier balance, deeper breath. Alongside the exercises came lessons about food. Jack taught her that nutrition was not punishment, but fuel. Colorful fruits, fresh vegetables, and wholesome grains became her allies, each bite a step toward feeling energized rather than ashamed. The flavors were unfamiliar at first, the textures a challenge, but soon her body began to respond. She noticed more energy, a lighter step, and even a sparkle of anticipation she hadn't felt in years. But the hardest transformation was not physical, it was in her mind. Each morning, Jack asked her to stand before a mirror, look into her own eyes, and speak words of truth. "I am strong. I am worthy. I am more than my appearance." The first days, the words felt foreign, like lies she could not believe. Yet, with Jack's patience and encouragement, they began to sink in. Slowly, a flicker of self-belief emerged, fragile but persistent. Days bled into weeks. Matilda's muscles ached in ways she had forgotten were possible. And yet, she persisted. The laughter of the past, the mocking glances, and the cruel words that had haunted her began to fade, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of her own determination. With Jack by her side, every small victory, walking an extra lap, finishing a healthy meal, saying a positive thought aloud, felt monumental. By the end of the third week, she felt a shift. Not only was her body responding, but her mind had begun to reclaim power over her fears. Her shoulders lifted, her gaze steadied, and she realized she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The transformation was only beginning, but already, Matilda knew she was on the path to becoming the woman she had always wanted to be. Not for anyone else, but for herself. Something was changing, and Matilda could feel it even before she saw it. The mornings no longer felt as heavy as they once did. She woke up with a little more energy, her steps lighter as she moved through the palace corridors. Her breathing was steadier now, her body responding with quiet strength instead of constant resistance. When she walked, her shoulders no longer slumped in shame. They stood just a little taller, as if her body itself was beginning to believe in her. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the tall palace windows, Matilda caught her reflection in a glass frame. She paused. Not because her body had drastically changed, but because her eyes had. There was focus there. Calm. Respect. I am not hiding anymore, she thought, surprised by her own realization. The palace staff began to notice too. Whispers followed her steps, low and curious. She looks different, some murmured. Is she walking with confidence? Others asked. A few watched with narrowed eyes, still searching for flaws, still waiting for her to retreat into herself again. But Matilda did not look their way. For the first time in her life, their opinions felt distant, like echoes fading down a long hallway. She returned to her routines faithfully. Morning movement, mindful meals, quiet moments of reflection. Each small victory felt deeply personal. Climbing the garden stairs without stopping. Choosing nourishing food without guilt. Holding her head high in rooms where she once felt invisible. Were these changes small to others? Maybe. But to Matilda they were everything. If I can win these moments, what else is possible? Jack noticed it too. Your confidence is growing, he said one morning, pride softening his voice. Not because of what you've lost, but because of what you've gained. Matilda smiled. Not the shy, uncertain smile of before, but one rooted in self-respect. She realized something important then. Confidence was not loud. It didn't announce itself or demand attention. It grew quietly, in moments of discipline, kindness, and patience with oneself. And once it took root, it changed how the world responded to you. That evening, as Matilda walked past a group of whispering courtiers, she did not shrink. She did not rush. She walked as she was, present, composed, and unafraid. The girl who once avoided mirrors was learning to meet her own gaze with pride. She wasn't transformed yet, but she was transforming, and that made all the difference. The room was quiet, wrapped in soft morning light, as Matilda stood alone before the tall mirror. For a long moment, she did not move. She simply looked. Months of effort, discipline, and self-belief stood reflected back at her. Not as a perfect image, but as a powerful one. Her body had changed, yes. Her posture was straight, her movements graceful, and her face carried a gentle glow born of health and care. But what took her breath away was not the shape she saw. It was the presence. The hesitation that once clouded her eyes was gone. In its place stood confidence, calm and unshakable. She lifted her hand, almost afraid the reflection might disappear. Is this really me? The girl who once hid in oversized gowns and avoided every mirror now stood tall, unafraid to be seen. She turned slightly, observing herself from every angle, not with judgment, but with respect. For the first time, Matilda smiled at her reflection. Not because she finally looked acceptable to others, but because she felt proud of herself. Proud of the mornings she wanted to quit but didn't. Proud of the tears she wiped away before training. Proud of the strength she built when no one was watching. Memories flooded her mind. The laughter in the palace halls, the cruel glances, the empty suitor visits. All of it felt distant now, like a life she had survived rather than a life she was still living. Who would have believed that the same body they mocked could carry such power? She stepped closer to the mirror and met her own gaze. There was authority there now, Not arrogance, not revenge, just quiet confidence. She understood something deeply in that moment. Her worth had never been missing. It had only been waiting for her to claim it. As she draped a finely tailored dress over her shoulders, she noticed how naturally she carried herself. No shrinking, no epalegi, no fear. The transformation was complete not because of how she looked, but because of how she felt. Matilda took one final look, placing her hand over her heart, breathing in strength she once thought impossible. The world had changed only because she had changed first. The grand hall shimmered with candlelight as Matilda entered, her presence commanding the room without a single word. Conversations paused. Heads turned. The same people who once whispered cruel jokes now stared in disbelief, their smiles frozen between shock and confusion. Among them stood Adana. She had been the loudest voice of mockery in the palace school, the one whose laughter had once cut the deepest. Now she stepped forward, her smile carefully practiced, her tone sweetened with false admiration. "Princess Matilda," she said smoothly, "you look radiant. We were hoping to speak with you." Matilda met her gaze calmly. There was no anger in her eyes, no bitterness, only strength. "I owe them nothing, not even my pain," she thought, standing tall. Adana gestured toward the others, who nodded eagerly, their expressions suddenly friendly. "We thought perhaps we could spend some time together again," she continued. "Like old days." Old days. The words echoed sharply in Matilda's mind. Days of laughter behind her back. Days of rejection. Days when she cried alone, believing their cruelty defined her worth. She inhaled slowly, grounding herself in the woman she had become. "I appreciate your words," Matilda said gently, her voice steady and composed. "But I am choosing to surround myself with respect now." She offered a polite nod, nothing more. "No explanation. No apology." Silence followed. The smiles on their faces faltered. Whispers rippled through the hall as understanding dawned. Matilda had not insulted them. She had not argued or exposed their past cruelty. And yet, her calm rejection spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. What hurt the most was not her refusal, it was her indifference. Adana's face flushed with embarrassment. She forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. For the first time, the power had shifted. The mockers had no audience. The bullies had no control. And Matilda did not look back. As she walked away, her steps confident and unhurried, the room seemed to part for her. The whispers changed tone. No longer sharp or cruel, but stunned and respectful. The kingdom was learning what happens when a woman refuses to shrink for anyone. Wasn't this the victory she once dreamed of? But Matilda understood now. True triumph was not about watching others fall. It was about rising so high that their voices could no longer reach her. The royal chamber was filled with warm light as King Hugo stood before Jack, his expression heavy with gratitude. The king had seen many loyal servants in his life, but none who had changed his daughter's destiny so quietly, so purely. On a velvet table beside him lay a chest of gold, jewels glittering beside a royal decree. "Jack," the king said, his voice steady but emotional, "you have given my daughter back her life. You restored her confidence, her strength, her future. For this, I offer you 100 million naira and a place among the honored men of this kingdom." The room fell silent. Matilda stood nearby, her heart full, her eyes fixed on Jack. She knew how much this reward could change his life. Anyone else would have fallen to their knees in gratitude. Anyone else would have reached for the gold without hesitation. But Jack did not move. He bowed respectfully, his hands clasped behind his back. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "I am honored beyond words, but I cannot accept this." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The king frowned slightly, confused. "Why would you refuse such a reward?" he asked. "Is it not what every man desires?" Jack lifted his head, his eyes calm and sincere. "Is wealth the true measure of purpose?" he asked quietly. Matilda felt a lump rise in her throat. Jack continued, "I helped the princess because it was right, not because I expected payment." Kindness given for reward is not kindness. It is a transaction. If I accept this gold, the lesson is lost, he thought firmly. King Hugo stared at him, stunned. In all his years of ruling, he had never heard such words spoken without fear or ambition behind them. Slowly, something in the king softened. He realized that Jack's integrity was rarer than any treasure he could offer. "You taught my daughter strength," the king said after a long pause. "But today, you have taught this kingdom something greater." Jack turned briefly toward Matilda. Their eyes met, not as trainer and princess, not as servant and royal, but as two human beings who had walked a difficult path together. No words were needed. Gratitude filled the silence between them. Jack bowed once more. "Let her story be the reward," he said. "Let others learn that true change begins with belief and compassion." As Jack left the chamber, the gold remained untouched. Yet the room felt richer than it ever had before. Matilda watched him go, understanding now that the greatest impact is often made by those who seek nothing in return. The day Matilda was crowned queen, the kingdom gathered under a sky clear and bright, as if even the heavens were bearing witness to her journey. The crown rested gently on her head, not as a symbol of power, but as a reminder of every tear she had shed, every doubt she had overcome. She stood before her people with grace, her posture steady, her eyes kind and resolute. In the years leading up to this moment, Matilda had devoted herself to learning. She studied leadership, justice, and compassion, not from books alone, but from lived experience. She understood the pain of being dismissed, the loneliness of being judged, and the quiet strength required to rise again. As queen, she ruled not with fear or pride, but with empathy. Laws were shaped with care, and decisions were made with the voices of the forgotten in mind. The palace, once a place of whispers and cruelty, became a space of inclusion and respect. Matilda created programs to support young girls and women who had been mocked for their appearance, their background, or their dreams. She listened to them, held their hands, and reminded them of a truth she had once struggled to believe herself. "If I survive this, so can they," she thought, her heart full of purpose. It was during this time of growth and service that she met him, not a prince seeking status, nor a man dazzled by a crown. He was gentle, thoughtful, and sincere. He listened more than he spoke, and when he looked at Matilda, he saw her strength, her kindness, and her resilience. He loved her not for how she appeared, but for who she was. For the first time, love felt safe. Standing beside her on the palace balcony, he did not try to outshine her or control her. He supported her, respected her, and walked with her as an equal. Was this not the kind of love she had always deserved? As Queen Matilda addressed her people, her voice carried across the square, steady and warm. She spoke of dignity, of self-worth, and of the danger of judging others by appearances alone. The crowd listened, many with tears in their eyes, because they saw themselves in her story. The girl who had once been mocked now stood as a symbol of hope. Not because she was perfect, but because she was brave.